Leon Kay, Executive Editor of Triple Pundit, will facilitate this robust discussion. Leon, take it away.
Great. Good morning from Northeast Central California. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the perspectives of industries that are really in the middle of this healthcare, insurance, and media. So I think I'd like to start with the industries that are really, in the middle of this. So, Lauren, I'd like to ask you first, how did J&J, can you shine color on how, you responded to COVID-19 on the outset? And, what have you done to really take a leadership role in making sure that your employees, as well as your stakeholders, have been able to stay safe?
Well, first, nice to meet you, Leon, and my fellow panelists as well. And thank you for the question. I will say, with Johnson & Johnson being the largest healthcare company in the world, we are very, very much committed to the COVID response. Of course, first and foremost, probably we are one of the companies working very hard on a vaccine. Our vaccine has just entered the third phase of clinical trials and is very promising. So we're all quite optimistic about that body of work. We also, in January, actually announced a focus for the company on frontline health workers before COVID really started, and already saw frontline health workers as a critical piece of the health system that others may not always see. And then, of course, as COVID hit, it really raised the sort of awareness, volume, critical importance of making sure frontline health workers had support really anywhere in the world. And so we sort of ramped up that effort, if you will, to say, how do we support their mental health and resilience? How do we support their training and capabilities, leadership and management, really with the idea that if you have a frontline health workers have what they need, then we all have better care. And so I think this focus there was quite important. We also jumped in the beginning in a really significant way, trying to help with the issues of PPE shortages, not only through our own supply chain, but leveraging our supply chain to find critical stores of PPE wherever it was and make sure it gets to wherever it was needed. And of course, with the rest of our company, with consumer products, with medical device, making sure that our products and our other pharmaceutical products were getting to the people who still critically needed them. So it truly is a story of every part of the organization pretty deeply engaged in this body of work. And I would say for my team, we were looking at frontline health workers with a very long view. And so we're continuing to do that, but we also wanted to know in the very short term sort of what we could do to really help them in this sort of crisis as well.
Yeah, I think that long view is important, considering, I think everybody was so focused on the shortages early on, way back in March and April, and here we are again. We're approaching winter, everyone's going to be inside again. So I'd like to now then focus over to another very important side, the insurance sector. So Darcy, again, just like to learn about, how you have the challenge of a very distributed network. You have agents in place as well as your internal employees. So, I'd like to hear your perspective on what you did when this all started.
Well, Leon, again, I want to thank you for the opportunity, and I also want to say good afternoon to the rest of the panel. At Aflac, as sure, like many companies, we're trying to figure out, pre-COVID, before we knew what it is now. And I can certainly say that within 2 weeks, our workforce, which is about 5,200 or so nationwide, it was single digits of number of employees who were teleworkers. And within 2 weeks, 98% of our workforce was armed with the tools and resources that they needed to be able to work from home, thinking that it was only going to be a couple months, and then all of us will return back to our workspaces. And fast forward 7-8 months later, here we are. And not only have we been productive, but I think Aflac has done a great job of ensuring that we are connected, right? Because it's so easy to not just be challenged with all the difficulties, whether you're working taking care of your elderly parent. Things are challenging at home as you're trying to manage all of those different hats that you wear. And Aflac has been with us every step of the way. So different touch points from your leadership in the case of my organization. They've been doing meals, whether it's breakfast or dinner or what have you. And it's not the thought of, oh, it's just the food. It's just the thought. One less thing to worry about. And also having your leadership in that case, getting it, that these are not easy times, and making sure that we're all connected and communicating with one another. Another area that's really common that we've been hearing about in the news is mental health. And that's, aside from having obviously the 800 hotline, for telemedicine, which is a new trend, AFLAC has also been having, whether it's town hall meetings or different resources, to just ensure that we're all okay. And if we're not, that there's resources available to help us through our journey. And I think that's critical. I think that employers, whether you're small or large, is making sure that you have that line of connection, that you're understanding, that you're also aware of what's happening to your employees.
I appreciate hearing that, echoing of some of these mental health components. I think it's been overlooked so much. I'm glad you shed some light on that, because again, no organization was really prepared for this. But I think there's a good segue here, this whole connectivity. For example, how do you connect a company where you only have 2% teleworking to 98%? So I think this is a good transition to Crystal, because you're dealing with employees and your stakeholders that have these fears and concerns, over their health. And you also work for a company that your job, bottom line, is to connect all of us, whether it's through information, entertainment. And you recently went through a massive merger. So there's a lot going on there. So I'd like to hear your perspective.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, you're right. We were in December, finalized the merger between Legacy Viacom and Legacy CBS. And so the whole COVID situation really hit us right in the middle of that merger, as we were bringing two companies together, bringing two cultures together, and trying to figure out what our new mission, vision, values, and all of that were. And then COVID hit. And so in many ways, COVID encouraged our organizations to come together on some basic principles that have been a part of their legacies, right? It accelerated that process. But to your point, our stakeholders, whether it be our people, our productions, or our audiences, were depending on us for messaging, right? And in that moment, from a people perspective, we did what everyone did. We made sure our people were good. We made sure that they were set up at home, that they had the connectivity that they needed. In media, we're used to being in the office. And so the idea of being outside of the office for more than a couple of days is foreign, right? We touch things, we produce things, we create. So we're present. And so, for us, we had to make sure that our people were good. But then in those areas where, the productions we knew were going to suffer because of COVID, we had to focus on those as well. And so we immediately partnered with the Actors Fund and the Motion Picture and Television Fund to get a relief fund, set up for our folks that are in the field, our crews, our cast, our production folks that were going to be displaced. And then also the rest of the industry, because there's a whole industry out there now who their job is to connect us through creativity and culture, who are unable to get to the places that they need to be able to do that. So it was important for us, as part of our first 5 steps, to ensure that our people were good, that our productions were good, and that we then pivoted to messaging around our audiences.
Okay. Yes. So it's interesting hearing how, for someone like me that just watches entertainment, whether it's a Viacom, CBS channel, or any of them, we just think these things happen. They appear on our screens, and we don't think about, the grips, all the stagehands, all those other people out there. So that part on, going that extra mile to take care of your employees all over was compelling. So thank you. So now I'd like to turn to one of the eyes of the storms and all this, Sacramento. And I think this is a nice place in which Stephen can step in. So you've been advising Governor Newsom. Just curious if you can talk about, there's so many moving parts to what's been happening in Sacramento and other state capitals. I was wondering if you can just talk about, with everything that you've been going through and experiencing, if you can talk about how, what you've been doing to work with, private companies, since we've got 3 of them here. That's all right.
Yeah. So I think the state of California, is normally out ahead of things. And it was kind of the same with COVID. I think they were one of the kind of original hotspot areas back in the spring. And they did a pretty good job at like tamping it down. And then I think, there was a bit of a either extension of the first wave or second wave, whatever we want to call it, over the summer, as the virus started to take hold in more communities of color and communities with essential workers. So I was really brought in to help kind of advise that, the communications of that, the partnerships around that. I think the governor's office has done a really good job of engaging the private sector, that's present there in the state, particularly the media and entertainment industry in getting the word out, we've done a lot of stuff around just the importance of wearing a mask, which I think today seems pretty common, but they were, as you can imagine, right? Even today, it's not 100%, but back over the summer, it was something that required a lot of messaging, and then social distancing, and there's a lot of cultural distinctions and differences. So part of my work was to really create a media consortium out there of companies that focus on the Latinx community, and think about how do we work together to use their production, creative, TV, digital, radio platforms to reach audiences that were impacted, and also how to do it in a fun and entertaining way. Yeah.
Okay. I think this is where we'll transition to the messaging part. And I think this part's so important. We have 3 very different companies here, right? But in their own way, 3 very iconic. These are all companies that touch our lives, whether it's, pain reliever or Band-Aids at a minimum that we have in our house. Everybody knows the Affleck duck. I don't think that needs an introduction, right? And of course, CBS Viacom. Everyone from BET to Stephen Colbert to whoever. So you all have really unique platforms by which you can communicate to your customers, to your consumers, and work with folks like Stephen. So the way this is supposed to work is apparently, I think all of you had PSAs that someone on our tech side behind the scenes, the stagehands, are going to run. So Lauren, I'd like to again start with you at the risk of sounding repetitive. You've got a voice, you've got a platform. What did you do to, as we say in business school, leverage it to get the word out there? You're on mute. You pulled a Leon, you're on mute.
Sorry, I think the host has muted us trying to help with the sound. Sorry about that. So I will share a bit, and then it sounds like you're going to run our pieces, which is terrific. But back to this issue on frontline health workers and their critical sort of place in the system, we created a whole campaign called Back the Frontline, and have used that opportunity through social media and other media to sort of try to help bring that support to the front line, as well as really, again, use that leverage our voice all over the world. And we're using it sort of beyond COVID. Right now it's really about COVID, but we see, again, that sort of much longer term as well. But I think using our J&J voice to bring attention, one of the things we knew in January was the 18 million gap in health workers in the system by 2030. Now we've probably all seen the reports that say COVID is setting us back even further. And so I think the critical using our voice, not just to tell the story, but to bring other people to the issue with us. And we've learned, from many of our stakeholders and partners, that it's helped them incredibly with awareness, with fundraising, with the kind of policy and advocacy support that they need. We've got a position now on frontline health workers that we're sharing. So I think it really is using all of the assets of J&J to support the frontline health worker, and Back the Frontline has been a very big part of that.
Okay. So this is where the PSA should play.
We've learned to live online, to keep 6 feet apart, to appreciate toilet paper. We've learned to blend family and work, and to cope with unemployment, sickness, and loss. We've also learned what the words dedication, professionalism, and compassion really mean. Now it's time we learned what our frontline health workers need from us. It's more than PPE, although that'd be a good start. It's access to the training and technology that can save time and lives. It's a platform so their experiences can inform public health policy for decades, and it's the care they need so they can care for the rest of us. That's why we at the Johnson & Johnson Center for Health Worker Innovation are putting $300 million to work to support frontline health workers around the world. If we solve the challenges they face, we will improve healthcare for everyone. Let's learn all the lessons from COVID-19. Let's back the front line.
I think that
What do
certainly
you think? Yeah.
it hits a lot of themes, doesn't it? It doesn't seem like it was that long ago when our social media memes were bombarded with images about toilet paper jokes.
Yeah.
And then it's a nice reminder. It's, our healthcare workers, have been hit really hard, and there have just been so many, horrible stories. And it's a nice reminder of, let's think about these people.
Absolutely. All of the roles that they play. And I think I love the message just around, instead of just feeling like this is happening to us, let's learn from it and let's make sure it doesn't happen in this way again. And if we can highlight some of these key things that are problems that we can help solve, that should obviously help us in the long term.
Great. So I know, Darcy, your company doesn't, you don't have a PSA to show us, but I was going to try to do the Aflac voice, but that but I mean, do you want to talk about, how, do you want to add a bit how you've been communicating this,
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the, of course, most companies were taking care of their employees, right, and giving back to the community. And one of the ways that we did that, we donated about 11 million. And people may not be aware, 75% of our revenue is from Japan. And so between both countries, we knew that it was imperative to support the frontline workers. I know in the US, we partnered with Direct Relief and Crisis Text Line, and providing them with the necessary tools that they needed to do their job, and also with some support, which is with the Crisis Text Line, a place that they can go to and just breathe for a moment, and also receive the support that they needed, so they can also provide us the care that we need when we needed to seek support from the hospitals. This was a trying time for all of us, from the families that were impacted, and for those frontline workers that were in it like warriors. Really trying to make a difference and help the people in need with support. And I think in our case, based on our business model that you touched upon earlier, Leon, 30,000 of our sales force was also impacted, obviously, because they're going into business places to sell our supplementary insurance, and that wasn't available anymore. And one of the ways that we provided some support was providing them with 0% interest loans, just to tie them over until things become a more viable place for them to be able to sell insurance. And I think it's important to say, I wasn't part of the crisis team that was working on a response to COVID, but there were 100+ pieces that were communicated to the different stakeholders, from employees to a customer, to our sales force. And of course, another group that people don't tend to mention is also the board, ensuring that they're locked in step with your plans. And in our case, that certainly was the case. And I know you're going to be hearing more from Catherine Blades later on today regarding some of our task as it related to that, but it's been a huge undertaking, and one that we're really close to our hearts, because I think if there's any time where communicators are of value, is today. How important it is for all stakeholders to not only understand what your position is, but also understand what they can do, during this difficult time, because we're all going to survive. After all of this, I think we're going to be stronger and better, and even more I would say, connected to one another, right? Because we're all going through this globally.
What I find so interesting, I mean, look, I'm an editor, right? So I get endless PR pitches about all kinds of things. And this is, you talked about, how the private sector can step in when the public sector, quite for whatever reason, hasn't been able to. So for example, I think we can remember all that time not too long ago when we were waiting for those stimulus checks. Is it coming in the bank account? Is it going to be a paper check? And you're the first company I heard of that actually made those, 0% loans available. So, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up. That might be something we need to talk about later, because with
Absolutely.
everything going on, it's important. None of us wants to wait, for a check to come in the mail if things are really dire. So I found that really interesting. So on that point, the pressure is on you, Crystal, because I believe you work for a company that's really good at producing great material like PSAs. So I'm just curious about, again, you had a great opportunity to seize the moment. What did you do? What did it take? And I guess we'll have a great clip.
Yep, sure. So we had to move quick. On a Friday, the ad council came to us and we had a conversation around how do we get the facts out there quickly, so that people know what they can do and how they can protect themselves and their loved ones. Saturday, over the weekend, our teams to your point, all of our brands, MTV, Nickelodeon, BET, CBS, got together, agreed that we were going to roadblock all of our programming, put some creative together over Saturday and Sunday, and Monday morning, we were rolling, right? So we had a PSA that the beauty of the relationship that we had with the ad council was, sure, it's great that we did it across all of our brands, but we needed to produce something for the industry to be able to use. And so they turned the outputs of the PSAs into something that whether you were at Viacom, CBS, or NBC, or wherever you were able to leverage that and share it with your audiences quickly. Right. And so between RuPaul and Trevor and, Jersey Shore, our talent got involved. It was really great to see, from our talent to our people to the industry, for them to just dig in and agree that we needed to get the facts out there quickly. And so what you'll see is simple, right? This isn't flashy. Viacom, CBS had 2 weeks to produce PSA. This had 48 hours needed to get the facts out there, PSA, and how do we do something that the industry can leverage? And it worked. And to Darcy's point, we were then able to pivot stay at home to then mental health messages, to then wear your mask messages, to then, don't be alone by yourself. The media industry and the creatives were here with you, and Trevor's going to produce from his couch in his home. And so we're going to make it happen, but it's just going to be different. And so hang in there, and we're alone together. And so with that, I'll let you tee it up. But Alone Together was our campaign that really had some legs and we were really proud of.
I would say that nails it. I mean, it's simple, but it's easy to watch and it resonates, quite easily. So thank you for sharing that. So finally, I'd like to talk to Stephen. Everybody thinks of California as, either, images of Santa Monica and palm trees, or San Francisco, but this is a very diverse state. As a native Californian, we have some of the most remote areas in the country. We've got desert, we've got mountains, we've got practically tundra way up north. So trying to find that voice to communicate to all 40 million of us is really tough. So I just wonder if you can speak to that, Stephen.
Sure. And I think, the governor's team did a great job early on getting the message out and putting things together quickly. We had some time later in the campaign to think about exactly what you just said. How do we have a universal creative, but with specific messaging that works? And so the team partnered with Sesame Workshop and put together a series of PSAs. One we're going to see is in Spanish with Elmo and his father. And the cool part about this is relatively recent. It was time to be with back to school, right? And parents, I'm sure a lot of people watching this are dealing with this. but all around the country, and especially in California, are dealing with the stress of this and how to talk with kids. And so you'll see this clip. Yeah, right. Me too. This clip, again, it's in Spanish, but basically it's Elmo and his father and giving advice in Spanish to the Latino community about basically what they can do to reduce their stress and get through this time together. So
Sí,
go
Elmo,
ahead.
enseguida voy. La escuela es muy diferente ahora. Todos los días los niños aprenden en casa con ayuda de sus
Algunos
padres.
días Elmo va a la escuela. Para mantenerse saludable, Elmo usa un cubrebocas y permanece alejado de sus amigos.
Es cierto, puede ser difícil, pero recuerden, cuando las cosas son difíciles hay que respirar profundo. Y estamos justo en eso.
Sí, vamos, papá. Es hora de la escuela en casa.
Cuidémonos unos a otros porque estamos juntos en esto.
So yeah, basically there, Elmo's father reminds everybody, take a breath when you're stressed. And it's okay to do school, at home. And again, we'll kind of get through this together. So we got a lot of leverage around that through distribution, but also media. And also adds a little bit of lightness and fun to a pretty tough time.
I was going to say, I love the mask. I want that mask. So if you can wait for Gavin to send one, that'd be awesome. I'll send you my address. So look at the executive producer has reminded me we're running out of time, but I'd like to channel my inner Susan Page and maybe give all of you about 30 seconds to really sum up and personalize it. What you've learned, how it's had an impact on you. I'll go around the horns. So Lauren, I'll start with you.
Great. Well, no, I appreciate the time and conversation today. Great to talk with all of you. I might just mention, I didn't mention another media piece that we're doing called Road to the Vaccine, which I've appreciated. It's a weekly show that Lisa Ling hosts from Johnson & Johnson on the web, basically, online. What I like about it is lots of people have questions about the vaccine, how they're created, why it takes so long, what do clinical trials mean? So it's been an incredible education vehicle, including for me. So I sort of have appreciated learning from all of you. And I think it is a time where I hope we can take these learnings and move things forward.
Thank you. Darcy?
I will certainly say I think this is an opportunity for us to stay more connected. Do not stay alone. Do not retreat to your rooms or to your own little worlds. Take a walk in your neighborhood. Talk to your neighbor. Talk to your loved ones. We're in it together.
Ditto. The thing that I learned was that people find connection through entertainment, and the responsibility and role that we all have in that life cycle and ensuring that people don't feel alone and that they feel supported with the tools and resources that they need to survive, whether it be this or social justice or any of the other craziness that's going on in the world. Our companies and ourselves as individuals have a role in that. And so it was a huge learning experience for us through this process.
Yeah. And finally, Stephen.
Yeah, I'll just say, I think this panel really, it kind of we talked about the things that I think are key to me and my work, the importance of media and communications, creativity, great brands and companies that care about their community and their customers and their employees, and the nonprofits, right, that are doing the hard work right now. So I think that's one key message that hopefully that lives on through this work. We're all going to need to partner and work together as we come out of this.
So my takeaway is that all four of you seem very deeply vested in this, not only professionally, but I think more importantly, personally. That's the vibe I got. So considering this is the first time we actually met virtually, I really appreciate how this flowed. I also want to thank you all for having screen doors on your windows so we didn't get distracted by a fly landing on anyone's head. And with that and a flurry of angry texts I'm going to expect soon from our executive producer, I think at this point I'll turn it back to Stephen. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Leon.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Thanks.